Hey, this is Erik Saunders with the Youth Football Coach's Handbook, and we are continuing our series in game management. And we're going to go ahead and be talking about getting there, and specifically how to get a full lot of players and parents, and all the people that are going to the games, and just to kind of cover a few things that you'll find yourself scrambling around trying to get done. So if you're a new coach, this is definitely something that you don't want to wait till game morning to start talking about. It's also a really good place to get the team mom involved or any assistance that you can, and make sure that you've got that kind of worked out before you get there. So one thing you got to think about is how far you're going. And if you are playing, I played in a league where we had pretty much every game we played was at least an hour away. A lot of rural roads, and look for Route 27, but it's really not marked Route 27, and so it can get a little bit crazy when you're trying to get to a place that's far away, or a field that nobody's been to, or even some of these complexes nowadays that you go into, they might have 25 baseball fields and a half a dozen football fields, and it's just, it can be kind of wild. So one of the things I recommend is, if you're driving any distance or if there's any confusion, you should really consider either carpooling or convoying to your games. And that is a great thing to do to stop you from being out of control of guys getting there. And if everybody's going in the same pack, then it takes some of the worry out of it. One of the worst things is to have players that don't show up in time, miss games. And so as a coach, it's just something to think about. A lot of times we'll meet at our own practice field or at our own local school at 2 hours before game time, or whatever it is that we deem is the right amount of time, and we'll all head over together. So of course nowadays with GPS and everything, MapQuest is a great tool obviously for you to get directions, but if you got the folks with the GPS, that can be a very big help as well. So it's just a thought, as opposed to letting everybody go there on their own separate ways, at least try to get as many people going together as possible, and it may save you a little bit of aggravation. I get a lot of questions from coaches regarding how early is too early to get to a game. And as a coach, I get there usually no later than 90 minutes before kickoff. And we have league rule for, we're in the Charlotte area, and on Pop Warner, I believe it's an hour and 15 minutes. If we're not on the scales an hour and 15 minutes before kickoff, they actually make us forfeit the ball, getting the ball on either half that goes to the opposite team. So it's kind of a rule that they're doing to keep us moving. At the same point, you don't want to have kids sitting out there, for 2 or 3 hours, especially in the beginning of the season when it's really, really hot, depending on where you're playing football, but pretty much all over the country it's going to be hot, at the end of August and the beginning of September. So you don't want guys out there baking, and you really don't want them out there hitting a whole bunch before a game and getting them spent before the game even gets there. So there's a lot of adrenaline that goes on, and the kids are not as bad as the coaches, but still, if the guys are laying all their good licks, 2 hours before kickoff, that's not good. We have pretty much a set routine that I stick with. We get there 90 minutes early. We go ahead and start stretching out a little bit and do some talking. We get up on that scale, at 115, and then at the 60-minute mark, we go into our pregame routine where we just go through the whole works there. So 90 minutes is my drop dead time for everybody to be there. And the next thing is that you should have a cell phone recall roster. And that's a good job for a team mom, is to just basically have somebody pull together every mother and father's cell phone, because almost every single person, it seems like, has got a cell phone at this point in time. And so there should be 2 cell phones for everybody. And if a guy's not there, at the 90-minute mark, I start having assistant coaches start calling, make sure they're on their way. Program all of your players' names into your cell phone. It takes a few minutes to do it, but it's really worthwhile, as opposed to trying to get a piece of paper out and dig it around. If you can just list all your players' names in there, you'll find yourself having a much easier time of it. So again, it's not much. It's just a little something to stop you from having a headache. And so hopefully that'll be something that'll save you some time there and make your life a little bit happier. So the next thing we're going to talk about is choosing captains on a youth football team. And there are a few lines of thought on this. So Some guys have got team captains that are the season team captains, and in fact, a lot of times I will do that. I have sometimes team captains. Somebody's got to be the guy in the huddle that speaks up on defense. Somebody's got to call the plays, and just depends on what's going on with the team. Sometimes I feel like we need to have team captains. Sometimes I don't. If I got a really team full of even players that have all been playing for a long time, we might not got to have a designated team captain, but that's up to you as a coach. I would recommend that if you have an option to do it, you might let the kids make a vote. And one thing you don't want to do is have the kids talking about or knowing that they're going to vote. So if you're going to do little pieces of paper, a little pencil thing, I would spring it on them as a surprise and just pull off, one guy at a time and have them come over. Don't tell them what they're doing and have them vote for the thing. That way you'll find out if the kids know what's going on, if they know what's coming up, they're going to lobby each other. It turns into a gigantic cluster. So, if you can get the feedback from the kids on voting on the captains, I think that would be probably the best way to do it. And I had one year on a 9-10 team, and it was a no weight class, and they picked for the defensive line captain. They picked a kid that was like 47 pounds, and he was quiet. I couldn't believe that they picked the guy, but they picked him. And he was a good kid, and he tried real hard. But that was probably the thrill of that guy's life. So, excuse me. So, just a little bit of thought on that. In youth football, it's pretty common that guys will pick a different guy every week, and I think that's probably a pretty good idea personally. And even when I have chosen captains for the season, a lot of times I still send different guys out for the coin toss, so they're the honorary captain of the week. And the two schools of thought are that they've done something special to earn that, or we're just randomly picking people. So that's up to you. I mean, if you can work it into your reward system, I do that. A lot of times if a guy comes out on top for points, he can choose that as a reward that he can go out for the coin toss. But really, I just let the guys go out for one during the season. And once we start getting into playoffs and championships, I usually, if I have designated team captains, they'll be calling the coin toss. So that's pretty much it on choosing captains. I think that covers it all. And we try not to make a big deal out of individualizing people in youth football. It really is a team game. And so just a word of caution is to don't put too much emphasis on this is the team captain, he's a special guy, because really, at under 12 or 13 years old, that I tell my guys, you're all the best player on the team. And I preach that pretty much all the time. Matter of fact, I preached it today. Today we're in August here, and we're in summer camp here now. And I asked them, who's the best player on the team? And I expect them to answer, I am, coach. And every single player should feel that way. Every single player should feel like they're the team captain. I want them all to be empowered to the point where, they think the game is won or lost because of them. And that's just, that's what I'm trying to instill in the guys. So a couple points on choosing captains. Hopefully it'll give you a perspective on it. And, I don't think it makes or breaks a lot of things, but it is food for thought. So, all right, pre-game speeches. And, you've only got X amount of time before, the referee's going to come and get you. And you want to get the guys together, and you want to say a few things. And just the first point on this one is to keep it short. And I keep it under 2 minutes. And, the kids really, as far as the motivational and rah-rah at 9 and 10 years old, I mean, I could be giving them the Saving Private Ryan speech or something for, 5 minutes, and they're tuned out. They're thinking about SpongeBob or pizza or whatever. They're playing their new Wii game. Guys, kids, and adults are motivated differently. We won a championship. We went undefeated one year, won a championship, and it was just a thrilling game for me as a coach. And I mean, I was exhausted, and we got the whole thing, and we get off the field, and we're up in the stands, and us adults are talking about how awesome this accomplishment and blah, blah. The kids are down the end zone playing touch football with the opposing team that they just played. So for the kids, I think keep it short. Say what you want to do. You want to just set the tone for the game. So try to spare them the Rudy thing. I would say just a quick reminder of what you want. and specifically not what you don't want. And we've talked about this already. But just talk about your game goals. You know what we're trying to do. We want to execute good blocks. We want to run the ball off tackle. We want to be stiff on defense. We want to be moving on defense. Whatever it is that your thing is, just reaffirm those things and then get on with it, okay? Avoid the don't do this, don't do that. If you guys do what you did in practice this week, we're going to have a long game. I mean, it's too late. You know, when the game is here, you coach the game. It's nothing like practice. Nothing negative in a game. No yelling, no screaming in the game. There's no point in doing it. You know, you're gonna coach a game. You're managing the game at that point. You know, and any emotional stuff you got to do. I mean, there's some of it there, but the game is for the kids. The practice is for the coaches. The game is for the kids. As coaches, our job is to give them a chance to succeed. So say what you want. Try to set things up. And a lot of teams have a rallying, you know, win one for the Gipper, Newt Rockney gets up there and all that good stuff. You know, there's a place for that as well. And if you've got something that you guys have, that's great. And just have it prepared, you know, and try to stick to the script and get through it as fast as possible. You know, again, kids are not always the most emotional guys, so try not to make something up just for the sake of having something there, because, you know, really just keep it fun is the big one. So, and one thing I've had some success with, and because it is the kids, again, I'll say it again. I said it already, I'm going to say it again. Practice is for coaches, games are for kids. That's as simple as you can put it. And the game is for the kids. All the work they did, that was for that. As coaches, we get that. You got to a football game, it is all about the kids. That is their game to win or lose. As coaches, we call the plays, but I mean, it's a youth football game. So, and I always let the kids break it down, and we have a little thing they do. They say get it hopping, and the guys all get jumping up and down. Who are we? They say Ravens. What do we do? They say fight, and then they break out of that, and they all, you know, they run to the sideline. So that's our little thing. You know, kids really like that. They play Madden football, you know. They watch the stuff on TV, and they take in some of the culture, and that to them is cool. They're not allowed to dance after they score touchdowns. They're not hardly allowed to high-five each other anymore half the time on the field. So, you know, try to work it in there. Try to pick a guy to break it down. You know, if you've got a guy that you want to break it down, you'd be amazed how many times the kids nominate somebody to break it down. And that's a pretty positive way to start a game. So a lot of times we'll break it down in the end zone. The kids will break it down in the end zone, and then they'll run out to the bench or to the sideline or whatever they're doing. So that's kind of a cool thing. So just a couple points on pregame speeches. I know a lot of this is probably, you know, is probably pretty standard stuff, but just trying to give you some thoughts in case, you know, you haven't been to your first game yet. If you're a guy that's not been to your first game yet, I'm a little jealous because it's a really exciting time for you. So I hope that some of this stuff will give you some guidance. All right, we're going to go to game themes. Now this is something that I don't know too many guys that do this. I do it because I love it. And in my professional life, I'm a sales manager, and I've coached a lot of kind of inside sales people and people that work in cubicles, if you will, mostly like a call center type environment, if you will. And one thing about that job is that I'm always trying to make up a game or some point of focus that's not the actual job itself. And the reason I do that is because really the job of these types of salespeople is repetitive in nature. They're doing a lot, they're being rejected a lot. And so I make up silly little games for these people, and of course I tie money into it as well at my job. And it's been a very successful thing for me. It's actually been how I've made a good living for myself. So but in football and with the kids really go for this. And, you know, for them, football obviously is a game and they want to win. But kids love games and they love silly things. And so I don't do it every game, you know, but sometimes if I think I need a little something, I'll wheel one of these things out. And we'll keep like a big board on the sideline, like a chalkboard or something. And so one game we're going to have a scavenger hunt. And so they're going to try to find a quarterback sack. They're going to try to find a fumble. They're going to try to find a passing touchdown. You know, all these things. They're going to try to find all these things. And we might get 20 things up on the board that they're trying to find in the game. And as they come off the field, they can run to the board and they can mark off the stuff. And if they get all the things, if they get 10 of the 20 things, everybody can get an extra snack. If they get 15, they don't have to do any hit-ems on the next night of practice. And if they get all of them, we're going to go get ice cream or whatever. Obviously you make up your own game, but the point of it is that kids really dig it. I mean, they just go nuts, and they just, it's just a little mind control thing, but it's just for them a really fun thing. So I have one where we tell them it's Christmas. The night before the game, or the last practice for the game, I tell them I got a call from Santa Claus, and he's wanted to wish us good luck, and he's going to be sending down some of his reindeer dust. And so that day at the game, I come in, I said, you're gonna, every tackle, it's Christmas. These guys, this team you're playing, they're your presents, and I want you to open them up. I want you to have fun. I said, Christmas morning only lasts when you get downstairs, or when you go under the tree. It lasts for like an hour, right? Hey, it's like a football game, and then the thrill is over. I want you to put all that positive energy into right now. Run down there. Don't let it get by you. Don't blow it. You know what? Christmas only comes once a year. And again, kids love Christmas, obviously. And pardon me if your religion doesn't call for Christmas. I think you should implement Christmas for football, personally. But other than that, I'm sure I'll get an email on that one. But they love it. And so I bring the little baking powder or whatever, and they rub it on their hands. I mean, I got 9 and 10-year-old kids. Half of them know the deal. But the point of it is, they like to play silly games, and they get all into it. And when they tackle a kid, I hear them. They're like, "Merry Christmas!" They tell the referee, "Merry Christmas." The other team has no idea what they're doing, but it's just a silly thing. Again, a lot of the kids they like that sort of thing. I have another one where we do a commando theme, and we use military stuff. We have them salute on good plays, and we do little machine gun things, and so you can make up your own games. I'll cut it off on that, but game themes are a really good idea. And if you sat down and you jotted down a few ideas for it, and again, I don't know if it's an every week thing, but our goal is to have fun. And I gave the kids a survey in the beginning of the year, and they want to have fun. Here's what I get for an answer. I like football. I saw football on TV. It looks fun. Okay, you're right, kid. It's fun. It is fun. So don't, and if you implement the games and the little fun things on the side, even if you don't come out on top on the scoreboard, again, just like that championship game where the kids were down in the end zone, they're literally just played it for all the marbles, right? And they got the trophy. They're in the end zone with their shoulder pads off. They're playing touch football with the kids they just played the championship game against. It's like it never even happened. So for kids, the theme is fun. Make some interesting things for them to do on game day, and you'll find yourself having probably some success with that. So, all right, we're going to skip over to the next topic here. All right, I have just a few thoughts on where to stand during the game, and there's not a lot to this. Basically, when I'm on offense, I stand behind my offense so that I can look at my quarterback, I can watch my running backs, and I can see my offensive line. I have other coaches that are watching the defense and telling me things like if their defensive ends are crashing, where their cornerbacks are, how deep their linebackers are. We will have some, for those of you that have this book already, there'll be some video on game management and what you see from the sidelines. It's tough to see stuff from the sidelines, and especially if you have a kid on the field. If you have a kid on the field, and I haven't. I've never had my own kid on the field. I will next year, so I'll probably be useless next year. But, you just get wrapped up in the game. And it's hard. If I tell an assistant coach, go look at these things, they don't do it half the time. They go watch the game. They sit over there and they scream and act like a bunch of monkeys. And I ask them, what's the defensive end do? And they say, oh, God, I don't know, coach. Or they make something up. But so for you as the head coach, if you're calling the plays, stand behind your offense. Look for blocking assignments. Look to see what your guys are doing. Are they standing straight up? And if they are, and you're struggling, then you're going to need to get out there and talk with them. You can't go on. You're only going to have a certain amount of possessions, probably 10 possessions during the game. You really can't afford for things not to go well. And so that's very important. It's really, if you see guys busting through the line of scrimmage, you're not going to see them if you're standing directly beside. You have no perspective there. So you can see guys crashing through the line of scrimmage much easier there. And so that's where I'd put myself. And usually just probably about 5 yards behind my deepest tailback, I'll stand behind him. So on defense, I stand in the same spot. So on defense, I stand in the same spot. I stand behind the offense, the other offense, and I normally will make some signals to my defenders about their alignment. So I'll hold up my right or left hand so they know strong right or strong left as I can see it. And I will occasionally call out plays. I will call out toss and sweep and dive. I mean, I'm pretty sure the guys can't hear me, but at least for me, of course, I have my guy that's tracking plays, and we track our plays and we track their plays. And, I want to know what's going on. And if I'm sitting there watching us get crushed on a sweep, or I see them cross blocking us, or they're pulling a guard, and all my guys are blitzing up the middle for some reason, then I realize that I need to get out there and make an adjustment. So, that's where I stand on the sidelines, and it seems to be it seems to work the best for me and give me the best view of what's going on. So, okay, the next thing we'll talk about is going to be play calling. And play calling in youth football is a pretty interesting thing. And the rhyme or reason is that you should have a series of offensive plays, and that you should do plays in succession, and you should build upon, if you run a dive, then you run a power, maybe then you run a sweep, then you run a reverse. So guys have kind of like the wishbone series is big on that. So, but whatever your plan is, for first things first, don't abandon it. I mean, at least run it for 2 series all the way through. And even if you have a fumble or you have a short series, run it for 3. Because if you've been practicing for 4 weeks or 5 weeks and you go out there in the first drive and you abandon your plan, you really didn't give it a chance to get a read on it. And I mean, I'd rather run my plan and see what I get, because if it's like a batting average in baseball, you don't have a batting average until you swing the same way every time. And so if you go out there and you just randomly throw stuff out there on the board and it's not working, and you're just throwing everything in the box at it, and you're doing all your reverses and try for passes, and you really don't know how bad things are. So you want to have an average. Even if it's a bad average, you want to have an average. Every youth football coach, should be running off tackle. There's shouldn't be a guy out there that's not running off tackle. That's the sweet spot for youth football. So if you didn't know that, hey, there it is for you. Light up the 6 and 7 hole. But you want to get off tackle, because a lot of youth football coaches, especially inexperienced youth football coaches, have their defensive ends on box. And so what that means is obviously 3 yards set for the defensive end. They're going to come in, they're going to set it up. In youth football, because that's what they teach the defensive ends to, and I don't teach my defensive ends to do that, by the way, but because they do teach the defensive end to do that, there's a sweet spot right off tackle. There's usually, unless it's a really great team, a less talented player at defensive tackle. Not always, but usually there's a guy on one side or the other at defensive tackle that's not all that. And so between the defensive end on box and the defensive tackle that might be their C-grade player, you've got a chance to stick it in there. But if you don't stick it in there, 4 or 5 times before you start messing around, you don't know what your base play will give you. And it's pretty common for me to start off a football game with a bunch of off power. I might run 4 or 5 in a row, and I don't care if we don't get a first down. I'm going to just keep hitting that off tackle, because that's what my team has practiced to do. We spend all that time, and I'll be darned if I'm going to go away from it in 3 plays. So then regarding if I get 5 yards on my off tackle and I run it again, and I get 5 yards on my off tackle and I run it again, I get 5, I'm not going away from it ever. I mean, I will literally run. I want to get Mike the ball for a while. You know what? We'll do that after we score a couple touchdowns. Once we get 2 touchdowns up, Mike can have the ball. But if the off tackle play is getting 5 and 10 yards a pop, then the off tackle play it is. So, and I run an overloaded line, which is 4 guys on one side and 2 on the other. And if the youth defense is not able to adjust, then tough duties for them. And if you're playing in a Mighty Might situation where you've got the coach on the field, I start in a balanced line, and then I say shift real quick, and I have the flanker who is lined up as the weak side tight end run back to their side real quick, and then we say set go, and I might only get that off a few times, but anyway, I try to sneak that in there on the guy on the other side there. We're on the field. You'd be on the field if you were coaching Mighty Might, so I'm not on the field at my level, but at any rate, so just want to, if it's working, stay with it, and then don't go away from your bread and butter. Don't go away from your bread and butter. Don't go away from your bread and butter. There, 3 times I said it. You should have it now. All right, set them up. And you want to call complementary plays in succession. And so for us, we're going to hit 40. Ours is 44 power, 44 power. Excuse me. Everybody's got my playbook here. So, should be, if we bump into anybody this year, they should have no trouble playing us. So 44 power, 44 power. And then once we've got that, well, we've got a reverse power, and it looks like kind of the same thing. Of course, the guy takes a counter step and comes back, and and off we go. It works great. It doesn't work great if I start with the reverse power. It doesn't work great if I run one power and then I run the reverse power. That's not how football works. The young kids, you want to show it to them, show it to them, show it to them, show it to them, then come back with your other thing. Don't be too jumpy. Don't just jump around. I mean, you got to have, your plays should look the same. We have a 20 dive, which looks like our 44 power. We have a 44 power, which looks like our 20 dive. We have a 43 reverse power, which starts off to look like the 44 power. Of course, it comes back. And all these plays are in the playbook. You can kind of go look at them and figure it out. But plays should look like each other. And any reverse or any counter, anything that's coming back, that shouldn't get shown for a while. You hold on to those things until you need them, and be careful with them. If you're just throwing them out there, there's no point in having that. I mean, the point of a reverse or a counter is to deceive. It's like fishing. You want to make it look like it's bait. You want to make it look like something it isn't. And then you want to really stick it to them. So just something on play calling, and really that requires you to be disciplined and have a script on the sideline and really be ready to do that, because you're going to be emotional on game day. And again, for new coaches, it's guaranteed you're going to be all freaked out on game day. So at least for that first couple of games, you're going to be a wild one. So write it all down before you get out there. All right, and I guess I don't even got to cover hold on to your gadget play. But and don't open with your trick play. And I guess you can once in a while. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you open with a trick play, but the reason for a trick play is that you'd like to trick them. So for the same reason that you want to set them up, if you open with your tailback toss, and unless I just think I'm going to get crushed by the other team for some reason, like they're the league champions for 10 years in a row or something, and their guys are all 6 feet tall, and mine are all 4 feet tall. It's kind of like a kick in the knee, And I had the wrong ball play done to me 4 or 5 years ago, where the center picks up the football and he just turns around, hands it to the quarterback. The quarterback holds the ball up and says, "We got the wrong ball," and he's walking to the sidelines, and then he takes off and runs for a touchdown for like 60 yards or whatever it was. And all my assistant coaches are going nuts on the sidelines, and they're just saying all this stuff about, that's not football, and all this mess. And, I said, and I knew the team was a little bit weaker, and I said, let them have the touchdown. What difference does it make? If that's how they're going to score their touchdown, that's it. That was the one time they're not going to get us with the wrong ball again. I mean, anytime that ball moved, and as a matter of fact, anytime that ball moved for the rest of the season, that play helped us, because those boys would hit the dang referee when he tried to pick up the ball. That ball never moved again for the rest of the season without somebody thinking they were getting faked out and that it was going to be that stupid one-trick play. I mean, it really burned their butts. And so I don't really mind gadget plays being run on me, and if I have them, and I got a little toss pass, and I might go 3 games without running a thing. I'm going to hold on to a gadget play. It's the old ace up your sleeve, if you will, And ace up your sleeve doesn't do you any good if you're wearing it on your chest. So just remember that. Save your trick plays in case you need them, and for teams that you need them against. You never know when you're being scouted either. So look at what is working and keep your play chart by your side. And I'm going to try to pull that up here. So let's see if I can get there without making a mess of this. And so if I come out here, we're going to say continue recording. And we're going to go to my desktop. And pardon me for not already having this up. My apologies, everybody. And we're going to go right in here. And we're going to go right to the game card. And of course you have this. And maybe in about a half an hour this thing will come up. I can see some editing in my near future. Alright, maybe not. There it is. Boy, that was quick, huh? Apparently the recording software takes some extra power. Play tracker. So you have this. And I just want to go to view and make this to where we can see it just a little bit better. Well, not having very much luck here, guys. Alright, so I have this chart, and what I have is one of my assistant coaches basically sits there with me, and he's going to track all these. Try to go full screen here. Maybe that'll help. There we go. So, and my guy is Russ. Russ has been with me for a few years, and Russ sits right next to me, and he writes it down. So I call the play, and he writes the number down. So, and you see down here on the bottom of the thing, there's my little deal. And Russ is walking around beside me, and he always says, "What's the play, coach?" You know, as if he doesn't know. I say, "Russ, the play is 44 power." So Russ comes right up in here, and he just puts a little 1 right in there, and 44 power. Who's the guy getting the ball? Well, that was number 23, right? And if you don't like 23, that was DF, which, you know, Doug Field or whatever. What was the result? It was 9 yards. Pretty typical of our play, and we just keep doing that, you know. And so this goes on and on and on, and so this is the whole drive. So you say, well, the next play that we ran was the 1 again, right? And it was DF again, and it was 4 yards. The next play we would run is 1, and it was DF, right? And it was 5 yards. Well, you can pretty much see how this is going to go, right? And it's going to just keep on going like this. And maybe at this point we've got first down, so I'll throw the old 2 in there because I just like to get wild. Well, DF gets it again, just so you know. And maybe that one goes for 7 yards, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it goes for 1 yard. And maybe that tells me I need to go back to 1. But the point of it is, as I go through the game, and if everything's going great, you know, I may never look at this thing. There have been games where we were winning the whole way through, and I never looked at it. There have been just as many games where I went to halftime and I said, "Russ, come here." And I looked at them all, and I said, "Oh, geez, God, dive. We've been killing on the dive. I didn't realize we've been killing the dive." Of course, the dive isn't too sexy, so, you know, but there it is, and I can see it. And if you've got just an assistant coach that will just do this for you and use this tool, you'll find out that, you know, it can really help. Besides, you can keep stats, which, you know, I don't know about you, but I like to have stats. I'm a mathematical guy, which is why all these sheets are built in Excel. And so, you know, I like to see what's going on. And if I'm making all of my hay with a play, then I'm going to do it. And so, anyway, there it is. So there's your play charter right there. And then there's at the end of the drive. So if I have an end of the drive and you come down here, you can see in the key there's a touchdown, there is a turnover fumble, turnover interception, there is a sack, there is a over on downs conversion, 1 or 2 point, a safety, a penalty. Those are all results of the play. And then so when we get down to the end of the drive, you know, I'll have them just make a line right in there. That's the end of that one. And it either says touchdown, it says over on downs usually. We don't punt too much. It'll also say fumble, or not too many interceptions. I don't think we didn't have any interceptions last year, and we threw for maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns. We threw for a bunch of conversions, but, you know, we didn't throw too much, and so we didn't have any interceptions, so that's good for us. But the point of the matter is, if you're doing this, If you're seeing interceptions in this sheet, you need to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself if it's really worth throwing, because you're only going to get a really good football team is going to get 10 or 12 drives during the game. A really bad football team is going to get 6 or 7 drives during a football game. Doesn't sound like much, and it isn't. It's not a lot. So you got to take care of the football, and any ball that is in the air on my team, we like to joke and say it's a fumble and that it should be recovered. But this is your report card as a coach. And when you go back at the end of the game and you look at this thing and see how your plays died and see how the plays were called, you're going to learn a lot. And you just keep going. So the next drive, once you get done here, it's got drive 1, drive 2, drive 3, drive 4. It goes all the way up to 12. This is technically 3 pages. This is technically 3 pages of information. So we got the same thing for defense, by the way. So there's the defensive card right there. There's a key down on the bottom. It's got the same type of thing, except for what was the play that the offense ran. And we just put dive right, dive left, off tackle, sweep, reverse, pass, punt. And the same reasons for the drive to come to an end are right here. And of course I've got some samples filled out, and I think it went out like that to you guys just so you could kind of get the gist of it. You keep up with your tackles, keep up with the results, and that way you can see, am I getting crushed off tackle? Maybe I need to move a guy. Great halftime adjustment tool right here. Everything takes work, and sometimes I get coaches that say things like this to me. That's a really cool thing you got there, buddy. But it's a pain because nobody wants to do that. Well, I spread it around. And we have a must play. If you're in Pop Warner, they have must play. One dad has to go to the other side of the field and count how many plays their guys are playing, and then I think it's like on both sides of the field. We didn't have it where I came from in Florida. It's a pain. I mean, it's such a sucky thing to have to do, to sit there and count plays instead of watch the game. So I have one guy that does that every week. So we're going to have 10 or 11, 12 games this season. Well, there's going to be 10 or 11 or 12 guys that do that job. So I just so happen to have a guy who likes charting the plays. But I mean, I make somebody do these things, just like filming the game. Filming the game is not an option. Somebody is filming that game. And if you're a football coach and you can't command people to do these things, you might want to take a class on delegation or authoritative asking. I call these things mandatory suggestions, by the way, which is, Russ, grab the clipboard, you're charting the plays, that's how it's going to be today, and Russ will do it. If I say, Russ, what do you think about charting the plays? Russ might say, well, I don't know if I want to do that. Well, I'm not asking. You're going to do it. So, it's for the sake of coaching football. If you're going to coach the game, there are things that we do that, and you say, well, I'm not all into that. Well, I understand, but then just don't complain if you can't put your finger on what's going wrong. I mean, as long as you're cool with just floating through the season, that's great. But if you're the type of person that bought this material, you're probably trying to figure out a few things, and I'm telling you right now that you'll learn more from this than most other things that you do. So there is play calling, and there is look at what's working, and those were the play cards. And you know what? I already covered the Magna Doodle earlier. So if you don't remember, there is a Magna Doodle that you can get. That's one of those little deals that the kids play with, and it comes with some big round magnets that are kind of neat. And so basically, that's how we call our plays in now. The kid's got a wrist rocket on his arms, or a little wrist card, if you will. And so we call in, 15. If you think your plays are going to get stolen, you're at a higher level, write 4 numbers in, and just tell them, just either have a signal for which one he's supposed to take. You could give it just like the old baseball thing, and just say your left ear, right ear, right hip, left hip is one of the quarters. I've never had to go that far. I've never had a problem with people stealing my plays, and I covered this in the other chapter, but that thing works great. I really recommend it. So, all right, as the game goes on, there are going to be things that you want to think about. And so if you're winning the game and you're absolutely crushing your opponent, and normally in these games you will know that within the first drive. You can kind of look at the kids on the weigh-in half the time if you've got a weigh-in and see what's up with that. And you probably should know their record coming in. A lot of times we do. We have in Pop Warner, but and if you have common opponents so you know what's going to happen. So you want to be prepared to make your game adjustments. And so let's just say best case scenario, you're killing them. Well, I don't know if you have a running clock. And if you're a new coach and you don't know what a running clock is in youth football, if you get up by 3 or 4 touchdowns, the game clock doesn't stop. It doesn't matter if the ball goes down into a gully and doesn't come back. They just keep it running. And it's like the mercy rule deal. And I personally despise the running clock. I think the kids practice, they practice so hard for so long and they really sweat it out and bleed and all of that I think the running clock is a byproduct of poor sportsmanship. To have a running clock says that the adults on the field can't moderate the game in a manner that is beneficial to both teams. So I understand why it's there. I get it. I hate it. And I will not allow my team to score. I haven't had a running clock happen. I've not had a running clock on another team in quite some time, years I'm sure. And the only time it's happened is, usually if I put in my, I take out my studs and I explain to them that, they can go block on the line, but they're not going to be playing linebacker and they're not going to be playing anything. They're going to get their butts on the line. And if they don't want to block on the line, they can get themselves a cup of Gatorade and chill. But the younger guys are going to go in there, and the guys that are not just, that normally wouldn't get a chance to do that are going to go in there. And I don't care if we fumble every single time. We're going to swap out the good guys there. And I'm going to try to get kids touches. And then I will run all those gadget plays in that game, just little Mickey Mouse doodahs and funny little things, just because I know that there's a higher probability for error on those. I'll run that little reverse thing, and, anytime the ball is going to change hands 2 or 3 times, it's probably going to be on the ground, especially with kids that don't handle the ball very often. So plus they're jacked up because they're in the wrong spot, and they're all, they're just geeked out. So, if you're winning big, you should have that second lineup. And we talked about the play card earlier. Your lopsided game, good or bad. So losing big, so winning big is easy. And if you don't know how to not score, I could give you some of my game film from the first couple of years, and that'll show you how not to score. But that one's pretty simple. Losing big, on the other hand, can be tough, especially for guys that are coaching youth sports. Guys that are coaching youth sports love sports. Generally speaking, we love kids and we love sports. There are times when guys just love sports, and so a lot of times it can be very frustrating to be losing big, and you just can lose track of what's important when this happens. It's tough to sit there and get pounded. And I believe my worst defeat was 56-6, and the other team was mortified that we got the 6. They just couldn't conceptualize that we scored. They looked like they lost at the end of the game. But, in a really lopsided defeat, it's awkward, it's hard. And so what I normally do, and I've consulted with a lot of teams, I get coaches as the seasons wear on locally that will ask me to come look at their team, find out what's going on, talk to the kids. And really what I mostly find out is I need to be talking to the coaches, not the kids. Nothing wrong with the kids. They're all the same. They're all thinking about pizza and girls. So, but in a losing game or season, we use the one play philosophy, which is win one play. I don't care if you give up 8 big ones, find one play. It's like if you're in a really big fight, and I'm not a fighter by nature, but I've been in a few, and if I was getting pounded into oblivion, I'm going to poke the guy in the eye before it's over, and I want to get my little thing in, and that's a great trait to teach kids, Sometimes we're going to have to grin and bear it, and I believe there's even a comment in my ebook there about if you're the anvil, beer, and if you're the hammer, know when to strike. Well, losing big is the anvil game. You're going to be getting pounded on, and you at least want to win a little bit. So make the guys focus on make one play, just win one play, and if they can win one play, try to get them jacked up. And I'll have them break the huddle one play, and so just try to get them to focus on that and just doing little things right, and that can get you through some of those things. Also, if I'm finding that things are getting away from us, I will switch it up. Now, the reason for switching it up for me, usually it doesn't make things better, but I will get some experience for guys that a lot of times my 9-year-olds, so I'm at the 9, 10, 11, and I don't really have any 9-year-olds this year, but I have a really good team this year. But last year I had a really young team, and all my kids this year that are 10 and 11 were 9 and 10 last year. So my 9-year-olds will go into key roles, and I'll start getting the younger guys some playing time. And as a coach, you've got to develop guys. And if you're not going all the way to the league championship, which, we got 185 teams in our league. So that means there's going to be 184 losers. So there's that number for you. Every season ends with a loss. In Pop Warner, every chance to win the championship ends in a loss. The playoffs start almost from week 1 for us because of how many teams there are. But, so that can't be the thing. The thing has to be teaching kids how to play football. And while football is not like baseball where, Johnny, why don't you go try shortstop for a while? Guys get a job in football and they do the job. But, if you ask the average offensive tackle in youth football what position he wants to be, he's probably not going to say offensive tackle. He's probably just dying to move over one spot and be the tight end. So, let the guy be the tight end, and throw him the ball. What the heck? Well, who cares if they intercept it and run it back, especially if you're on a running clock, So I do try to switch it up and get some different players in there. It's not always the most fun thing, but a lot of times you come out of games like that and the kid got to play a spot that he doesn't know they lost big. He doesn't know that it was 40-0 or whatever. He's coming off the field saying, dude, I got to carry the football. Who cares if he ran it 3 times for negative 18 yards? He's going to go and tell his grandma he ran the football. No, it was awesome. I didn't fumble or nothing. So a couple points to think about monitoring the game. All right, now for the real deal, which is tight games. And tight games are great. That's what football's supposed to be. Every game is supposed to be a tight game. In our league, in Pop Warner, it's supposed to be a tight game because they go to great lengths to. It's like NASCAR. Everybody's the same. Everybody gets the same stuff, and everything should look the same. And you know what? It is really. It is in Pop Warner. There's some exceptions, but for the most part, the talent level's pretty darn even. And so, a coach can make a difference. And if you are a customer that's bought this material and you're trying to be a better coach, it's like the person that goes to college forever and never does, they never apply. A tight game is where everything that you've studied, and, if you're the average overzealous coach like myself, and you've been studying what you're going to do for the season since March or April when the NFL draft happened, that's when I get the most hits on my website. All you guys come and visit me right after the draft because you start getting excited. But this is where we earn our money. This is where all the stuff you studied pays off, and this is where preparation comes into play. Having all your ducks in a row, so to speak. So things you want to think about in a tight game. 1, make conversions. You will lose close games by not converting your extra points. I am speaking to you as a man who has a great deal of experience in this. I lost a championship on a conversion one time, because of some conversions rather, and that was the ending of a very long winning streak, and it was a painful thing, and it was absolutely 100% my fault. My fault. So I messed up 2 conversions on that game. And I personally have seen a lot of teams, and we've won championships where we converted and the other team didn't. And so if you're in a tight game, have your conversion plays ready to roll, because if you get down to the end, you're not going to kick a field goal. With Adam Vinatieri won't be out there for you. So you're going to want to make those extra points. So number 2, excuse me, use your timeouts very wisely. You're better off to take a penalty. You're better off to take a penalty for a delay of game than to throw away a timeout in a tight game, unless you're really driving and but you got to hang on to your timeouts. And maybe that just means don't get into a situation where you got to take a penalty. You should know your plays, but don't just throw them away. Don't just say, hey, let's think about this first half thing, this a little bit longer, and then you get down to the end of the first half and you needed those timeouts to make it work. And the referees in the youth level are all about getting home to catch the college game. And I know that that's probably going to cost me a few calls this season, but the guys a lot of times are on the clock. They got 4 games to do. They're on a schedule. They're thinking about the big picture. They're not thinking about your game exclusively. That's the truth. So, take care of those darn timeouts. Hang on to them. And if you need to use 3 of them in the last minute of the game, you'll be darn thankful you had them. So, and obviously be aware of the clock. So, if you're on a field with a running clock, that's great. That's very good for you. If you're on a field with no clock, like I have been for the last couple seasons, you got to have that referee every single time, every play, telling you how much time, and if you are trying to run a hurry up, make sure you guys are getting out of bounds. Make sure you know to spike the ball, and if you don't know that, you cannot spike the ball from the shotgun. Learned that one the hard way a couple years back. But you really need to be aware of that clock, and don't lose a game because of those 3 things. So, and also regarding tight games, stick to your bread and butter. Don't try to go crazy. Your reverses, your passes, they'll kill you. They'll kill you dead. I mean, I know it doesn't feel good. You do want to run the sidelines if you can. If you can get out of bounds, that's a big help and gives you guys a breather. But ultimately, you have the same chance of breaking your power as you do a reverse. I mean, unless you've been just hanging on to it for the whole game and they haven't seen it. But if you're trying to run a reverse, the coaches, what do you think the guys on the other sideline are all freaked out saying, watch reverse, watch the pass, watch this. You never hear them say, watch the off tackle. And so ultimately you'd like to put the ball in your best player's hands. Think about, who's my oldest guy? Who's my most unflappable kid? Who does not ever fumble the ball? Put the ball in that guy's hands and let him go. Run him off tackle. That guy should be your tailback anyways, by the way. But, that's where that ball should be. And if your bread and butter isn't good enough to win the game, it's not good enough to win the game. I mean, you gotta give your best player the chance to win the game. Take care of the clock. Have your timeouts. And if you get that thing in the end zone, you have a chance to make a conversion. That's where you got to have some really good plays. That's a good place to throw the ball down the end zone. Anytime that those guys are going to line up and blitz you like that, and you obviously would need to practice pass blocking with a full-on blitz, which is kind of like blocking for a field goal, actually, so it's really not that tough. But you're going to want to sprint your quarterback out and have 2 or 3 options. Really, 2 will get it done. A flanker that just runs to the corner of the end zone that stands there, and then a little tight end to do an out. And one of those 2 guys will be there. And those cornerbacks got to make a choice usually. Very rarely will the guys get it just so. You got a much better chance of and go from the shotgun on those if you can pull that off. That way your quarterback doesn't get nailed by some dude screaming through the A-gap. So a couple points on how to manage games, and hopefully some of that stuff will come in handy for you. And we're going to quickly just cover post-game speeches and a couple things that I think are important. One thing that I do is probably a little different, but I do hugs and handshakes. The high five at the end of the game is great. Then all of my players run over and they line up shoulder to shoulder in front of their mothers and fathers. Their mother and fathers have been instructed and conditioned, and we do this in practice before the season starts when we have scrimmage. I make all the parents do it so they get the gist. But as the kids are doing their handshake, all the parents come down and line up on the sideline on the field. The kids come back from their handshake and stand in front of their moms and dads. And they will shake their father's hand and they will hug their mothers. And that may be the only time all week or whatever that they hug their mom. So, it's a really great thing. And I got there, it keeps things in perspective. Regardless of whether the kids won or lost, their parents love them. And the parents love them so much they spent a boatload of money to get them on a football field because it costs about $500 to let a kid play football nowadays. Between registration fees, equipment, dicks, gas, Gatorade, traveling around, all the garbage that goes into it, it's expensive. There's no cheap way, and football is a different game. So when parents let their kids play football, they deserve a hug. So at least let them have that. And it's a very positive deal. It's a very positive deal. Once they have finished with that, we bring it all in and we have our little post-game talk, if you will, or speech or whatever. So, excuse me, I always start with what we did well, and whether or not we got beat, 40-0, or whether or not we beat them 40-0, I'm going to start with what we did well. So if we didn't fumble, we talk about taking care of the football. If we moved the ball well running, we talk about that. If we shut them out on defense, we talk about that. Whatever, I find something. Try to refrain from pointing out a player's great effort if you can help it. It's really, it's great to say for Bobby and Bobby's dad or mom, but the rest of the guys probably don't want to hear it unless you're going to name every single kid. You make one guy feel good, you make 24 others wonder if you're going to say their name next. So just put some thought into that. Once I've done with that, I talk about opportunity to improve, and I specifically say it like that. I got a typo there. So where do we need to work? And we start talking about what's going to happen next week. Well, guys, we did really good, but we ended up having to get a little sneaky and come back with the counters. The power started going away on us in the second half, and I really think what happened was our level of conditioning wasn't all there because I could kind of tell everybody was standing up and the blocks weren't being executed. So we've got an opportunity to get better as a football team there, and when we go back to work next week, that's what I want to focus on, is making us a better football team. That's it. And if you got beat 40-0, I'm sorry for you. You shouldn't probably get beat 40-0 too terribly often. If you're a good football coach with the average football team, you should get beat, but you shouldn't get beat 40-0. And I don't ever sit there at the end of the game and preach big changes because it's the worst time. First of all, you should never preach big changes. If you have big changes in store, you should implement them. You do not need to put up a billboard and tell everybody they're coming. It's the old, I'm going to give you a spanking, and I don't know if you're for corporal punishment, but in the Saunders household, we're for it. I have 6 children. So, I don't advertise that is going to happen. It's just traumatic for the kid. If they've earned a spanking, they'll get one. I explain to them that, as I'm taking them upstairs and we're going up there, and for all they know, we're going up there to make their bed, but we get up there and this thing happens. And then I'd explain to them why it has happened and what's going on. To get up and preach anything in front of a team about that was awful, and if you think that's football and all this stuff, it's really not appropriate at all. You can tell them you're disappointed. I've told a team I'm disappointed in their effort before. But that's not telling them that heads are going to roll, because heads aren't going to roll. This is youth football. If you need to make some big changes, you talk to your coaches about that. And then you just make those changes, and you don't have to explain to anybody what's going on. You're the head football coach. If you're the head football coach, make a change, coach. So, but watch the end of the game for that. Don't do that. And then another thing is, if you do have that problem where you feel like the game didn't go well and you need to make some changes, stick to the basics. Go back to the basics. Look at yourself and see, did you get off track? But, at the end of the game, if you've had a tough day, just tell everybody, we are here to teach you how to play football. You are here to learn how to play football. And kids, when we get back together on Monday or Tuesday night, we will continue our mission to learn how to play football. I had fun today. Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll do better next week. We'll start again. Take it easy. And we break it down and get the heck out of there. And that's it. This is another less is more type of place. I've seen guys sit there for a half an hour at the end of the game. Save all that stuff for the banquet at the end of the season. You don't want to have nothing to say there. So, say what they did well. Say what they can do better. Can any feelings that you may have about making changes or we're going to get a different quarterback, let the kids break it down. And normally I'll pick somebody, or maybe I'll ask the guys to pick somebody, and they may They may do it, but are not. Let the guys break it down and get them their Gatorade and their Twinkie and go have a great day. So these are a couple of points on game management, and hopefully you found some of this useful. I feel like I might have been on my soapbox a little bit tonight, so I apologize for that. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I'd just like to point out, I think there was a bunch of pitfalls in this message. So hopefully if you can avoid some of those, you'll be the better off for it. So, and also if there's something I didn't cover in here, which there probably is a lot, you're always welcome to email me and ask me either how I feel about it or how I might handle a certain situation. So, all right, guys, thank you very much.